Right, so we now know a fair bit more about Egypt's much vaunted plan for the reconstruction of Gaza. Their plans not requiring the removal or relocation of the Gazan people at all in order to rebuild the Strip. And I have to say, I'm liking what I'm seeing by way of ideas so far here. All set to be presented for other Arab nations at a Saudi-hosted summit on the 4th of March. This is a plan that will require a global effort to pull off. Nations will be presented with a choice to put up or shut up when it comes to their expressions of sympathy towards the Palestinian people. Does it mean something or not? Because now there's an opportunity to back that up with action. But when it will definitely put nations on a collision course with Israel, those who refuse to take part, and I'm looking at our Prime Minister Keir Starmer especially here as one example, they'll be totally exposed as the Israeli shills many of us already suspect them to be. Where he hasn't yet allegedly seen the plans despite more detail having been made public, I doubt very much that Donald Trump will be thrilled by these plans either, which for my money doubles the credibility of what Egypt are offering here. It's a solution. It's not a quick one. It's not a cheap one. But it is the right one. Therefore I expect vested interests to very much end up standing in its way. Right, so Egypt's ambitious plan to rebuild the Gaza Strip after the devastation caused by Israel's genocide of the Strip looks good to me so far from what I've seen. A lot of details still to come though, mind, so caveats there. They've looked at not just the reconstruction, but the wider aspects as well, and knock-on effects this genocide has had on the wider region, and how to resolve those matters as well. Though you may find you question some of it, certainly, as more and more detail gets put in. Any plan of this kind, any vision for Gaza as this is, it is essential that there is a good and robust debate about it. But as much as it is about rebuilding Gaza, it's also about the geopolitics of the situation, regional stability especially, a direct challenge to what Israel thinks it can get away with going forwards, and also a direct challenge to Donald Trump's ethnic cleansing vision for Gaza too. So what's in Egypt's plan that we knew of so far then, Damo? Well, here's an excerpt laying it all out. According to Al-Arabi Al-Jadid, Egypt has developed a plan for the reconstruction of Gaza, which will be presented to US President Donald Trump as an alternative to his vision to ethnically cleanse the Strip. The plan is structured in two phases. The first focuses on large-scale reconstruction over 10 years, including infrastructure, housing, and creating safe spaces in northern Gaza. A key part of this stage involves addressing the weapons issue, imposing restrictions on weapons depots while not disarming Palestinian resistance factions. European and Egyptian authorities would jointly supervise these depots. An Arab committee, led by Egypt, would also handle disputes between local security and Palestinian resistance factions. The second phase includes setting a timeline for a two-state solution and establishing connections between Gaza, the West Bank, and Jerusalem. The plan also proposes continued US security involvement, but limits its role to monitoring specific locations, including points of contact between Gaza and Israeli settlements. The Egyptian plan faces criticism from an unnamed Gulf state, which opposes Egypt's rejection of proposals aimed at encouraging the migration of Gaza's residents. Israel also opposes the plan, demanding full control over the reconstruction process to prevent Hamas from strengthening militarily. Egypt is seeking Arab support for the plan, which will be discussed during upcoming summits in Riyadh and Cairo. The aim is to secure enough backing to pressure the US to convince Israel to accept the proposal. To start with, let's not forget the scale of the devastation. Israel's genocide has left Gaza in ruins end to end. Entire neighborhoods have been flattened, infrastructure utterly destroyed, and thousands of lives lost. The United Nations estimates that rebuilding Gaza could cost tens of billions of dollars and take decades, but Egypt reckon they can do it in 10 years. Of course, that's assuming the ceasefire becomes permanent and that this happens now. Before Israel resume atrocities, that still seems the likeliest next step. So, yeah, difficulties and time frames to be debated and matters to be, as I said, robustly discussed. Rebuilding Gaza is going to be about more than just putting the money into bricks and mortar, though. It has to address the root causes of everything that led to the current conflict and creating a sustainable future for not just Gaza's people, but for all Palestinians. The links between Jerusalem, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. A very interesting proposal by Egypt, quite radical even, we could describe it, but actually it shouldn't be, because this is a state of Palestine, and they should be able to be united and travel between each other. But for all Palestinians in the wider Middle East, where Israel has proven to be such a disruptive force, that also seems to be wishful thinking, maybe. But let's dig into this plan a little bit further anyway. Cairo has stepped forward. They've stepped up. They have offered another plan, a comprehensive plan at that, to rebuild Gaza, not just in terms of construction, but also in reshaping the region's political landscape. And it's a direct challenge to Donald Trump's illegal vision, rancid vision, which many critics say is less about rebuilding and more about displacing Palestinians entirely for his own ends. And so from that standing point alone, this Egyptian plan ought to have the support of right-thinking people the world over. Even if some details they may take issue with, they need to be hammered out a great deal more, maybe. But according to reports, the proposal is going to focus on three key areas, which are reconstruction, governance, and regional stability. First, Egypt is calling for an international fund to finance Gaza's reconstruction, with contributions from Arab states, the EU, and other global partners. Basically, any state and world leader worth their salt who has said that Gaza must be rebuilt and actually means it, or intends to mean it, intends to back that up with deeds and not just words, it's time to put your hands in your pockets. If you've been backing Israel, you should pay double, quite frankly, to do more than just rebuild homes, but also engage in restoring hospitals, schools, critical infrastructure that Israel has destroyed. This needs to be a humanitarian effort, the likes of which we may never have seen before. Egypt's plan also includes a proposal for a new governance structure in Gaza. This is still a rather hazy part of the plan. Of course, there is still much more detail we don't know yet. I need to keep reiterating that. But the idea is to create a unified Palestinian leadership that can oversee reconstruction and eventually negotiate a lasting peace with Israel, a move towards the two-state solution that, frankly, I very much have reservations about, because I cannot see Israel ever agreeing to it without being sanctioned into the ground and forced to, which nobody ever seems willing to do, not least the United States. This new authority, though, would replace both the Palestinian Authority and Hamas in Gaza. No elections held in Gaza since 2006, since Hamas beat the PA in elections to run Palestine, all of it, and Mahmoud Abbas of the PA decided to say no and has squatted in post where he's remained ever since. Gaza fell under Hamas control at that time as Palestine split along those political lines, but they've no moral high ground, having not held elections themselves in Gaza either. In the name of peace, therefore, would both sides agree to this, Palestinian Authority and Hamas? Would they agree to this? Perhaps on the basis of one-upping an Israel guaranteed to refuse to support it? Maybe. But it's a big political risk and will take some seriously talented negotiators to overcome. Oversight coming from Egyptian and European states and not the US is a welcome move as well, I think. And one Trump may kick back at. Israel certainly already are, as they are demanding complete control of such oversight, but they mustn't ever have any of it, because they have been the biggest problem of all. But the US have been as much of a problem as Israel have been, because without their weapons, Israel cannot do what it has been doing. But, however, this also offers Trump an out from his own ethnic cleansing stupidity if he wants to take it, given he and his forces can just fall back to minimal roles just addressing security in some areas, as the Egyptian plan, so far as we know the details of it, is called for. Trump's plan, of course, instead calls for the voluntary resettlement, inverted commas, of Gazans outside the Strip, but it's ethnic cleansing, and it's unacceptable, and it can't happen. Taken control of by the US, as Gaza would be, a redevelopment opportunity for Trump and his appalling family is no doubt what would end up being the case. Egypt's plan, on the other hand, is all about keeping the Palestinians in Gaza whilst it gets rebuilt, and giving them a voice in their own future, which Trump would take away. And while Egypt is pushing for a regional consensus here, though, with the summit in Riyadh and another one in Cairo to follow, they haven't got 100% of that, it seems. According to an Arab diplomat, at least one Gulf state is hesitant to fully back Cairo's plan, fearing that it could alienate the US and Israel. God forbid. Which state could that possibly be? Not quite sure which state could be quite so quisling, given that it's not been made public who it is. But if I were a betting man, I'm currently looking at two in particular at the minute. I'd be looking at the United Arab Emirates, whose US ambassador has opined very unpopularly that the ethnic cleansing of Gaza is the only way, though that has been rebuked by that nation's leaders. Or perhaps it might be Bahrain, who joined in with the US on missile strikes on Yemen last year. But I dare say they'll make their feelings known to us publicly in due course. Well, this then brings us to the bigger picture, though, and different states having different ideas about regional stability and what that means. By addressing the root causes of the conflict and giving Palestinians a stake in their future, Cairo hopes to reduce the appeal of extremism and create a more stable Middle East. It's a vision that aligns with the interests of most Arab states. but clearly not all of them who prefer more westernised ties, and sure as hell not Israel, who are the biggest disruptive force ever since they were formed. Trump remains a massive hurdle, though. While he hasn't yet seen Egypt's plan, he says it's safe to say he's not going to be thrilled by it, I don't think. Trump's vision for Gaza is all about Israeli dominance and marginalising Palestinian voices, and he is eyeing up that real estate, of course. Egypt's plan, by contrast, is all about empowerment and inclusion. It's a clash of ideologies. I won't say a clash of ideas and thinking, because thinking is painful for the carrot-complexioned calamity leading the US. But the outcome, should things move Egypt's direction, could shape the region for decades to come, and optimistically, peace in the region as well. Of course, Egypt's plan isn't without other critics claiming the plan to be unworkable. Some argue it's too ambitious, given the political divisions amongst Palestinians and the lack of trust between Gaza and the West Bank at this point. But frankly, this is nonsense when, if successful, neither Hamas nor the PA would be running the Gaza Strip, or running the Palestinian state united and unified as it could be under Egypt's plan. Others worry that it could be another false promise, like so many reconstruction plans before it. And let's face it, Egypt have always been typically close to the US themselves and very placating towards Israel. So this would mark a significant shift for Egypt away from all of that, though Sisi's survival as president may necessitate that now. Egypt's plan represents a real viable alternative to Trump's plain illegal vision that the Israeli hard-right are in love with, the rule of law not ever applying to them in their heads, always the victims and never the aggressors, despite decades of being the occupiers. This presents itself as a chance to break the cycle of violence and create a sustainable future for Gaza and the wider Middle East. And that's definitely something worth fighting for. And if the Arab nations, or the vast majority of them, can unite around that, that's a powerful force to contend with. One other possible reason for this shift against Israel on Egypt's part, with tanks parked outside of Rafah as they still are and all the rest of that, is because of a plan leaked from Israel which detailed a doomsday-style attack on Egypt by Israel. All part of the greater Israel ideology. Yes, we're back to that one again. But one which could see literally millions of Egyptians killed into the bargain, a genocide on a scale that would put the last 15 months of Gaza, frankly, in the shade. To check out the details of that extremely serious and very underreported story in this video recommendation here is your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe before you do so, though, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new content published daily. Try to support the channel at the same time, which is enormously appreciated as always, and I will hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.